What's up, you guys? Today's animated series review is about a group of 4 mutated, hero-and-a-half shell brothers trained by their father-like sensei to stop an evil clan from world domination, and I'm talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Please keep in mind, with the series being the largest amount of episodes that I had to watch on this channel, I will solely be focusing on the main storyline or plot involving the main characters, as that's what progresses the show throughout the course of our beloved heroes within each season. Ninja Turtles the animated series aired in 1987, consisting of 10 seasons with a total of 193 episodes. Our story begins in New York City with a narration by none other than Channel 6's news reporter April O'Neil, shedding the light on the recent crime waves as stolen high-tech equipment is the latest trend by rumored ninja assassins traced back to ancient Japan. It is soon followed after her special report that a group of thugs are ready to do some mugging until miraculously being rescued by anthropomorphic creatures within the shadows. When getting acquainted to just what exactly saved her from this turn of events, she of course faints, but later learns the origins of what they're known to be called as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The origin story is then explained by a giant talking rat who enlightens the history of the well-known Foot Clan located in Japan, as we're introduced to 2 students named Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Saki. With both being well-trained martial artists and only one spot to be honored as the master of the Foot Clan, Oroku Saki sabotages Hamato Yoshi by making the sensei believed he was out to kill him when being disobeyed. This led to Hamato Yoshi to be banned from the clan and fled to America out of embarrassment, and so instead of looking for jobs or actually making an honest living, he decides to live in the sewers, being extremely broke, and becomes friends with rats. Meanwhile, up on the streets, a kid winds up tripping and drops his pet turtles into the sewers where they are drenched with mutagen ooze. So when Hamato Yoshi discovers them, unaware that whoever gets in contact with the ooze gets the trait of whoever or whatever touched them last. This caused the 4 turtles to turn into human-like creatures as Hamato Yoshi transforms into a giant rat. Moreover, because Hamato Yoshi came from a ritual background and enjoyed studying and learning, not only did he train each turtle the art of ninjutsu, but he also named them after Renaissance painters, and after all that, April is still in denial. However, seeing how April doesn't give 2 shits about what she just heard, she decides it's best they each help her out, as this will be a good story for her to cover to gain promotions in her failing career. Unaware it's being observed from afar, the once honorable Foot Clan has now turned into an army of criminals under the new leader named the Shredder, also known as Oroku Saki, whom also relocated to New York. By learning that Hamato Yoshi is still alive after trying to kill him once before by dumping ooze into the sewer, unaware what he really created, now understanding that Hamato Yoshi is Splinter and having his sons of turtles out for vengeance against him, with only one goal in mind, not only does Shredder want to eliminate Splinter, but he also gained a new threat in which his mission is to kill the boys in green. So within the Ninja Turtles you have Leonardo, the leader, Raphael, the humorous jokester, Donatello, the intelligent innovator and main asset to the team, and Michelangelo, the wild, crazy, and adventurous pizza addict. Then you have Master Splinter, aka Hamato Yoshi, the sensei, and April O'Neil, the news reporter, whom becomes their strongest ally and connection to the surface level. And then you have so many other allies like Irma, the Neutrinos, Zack the 5th Turtle, Casey Jones, Mac, Lotus, Usagi Yojimbo, Metalhead, Bugman, Mondo Gecko, Mutagen Man, Muckman and Joey Eyeball, Kerma, the Punk Frogs, and Rex 1. Although Mr. Thompson and Vernon were usually against April, for the sake of this review, let's put them both as supposed villains. And then you have a bunch of one-off characters that can also be filler characters like Hokum, Mona Lisa, Aunt Aggie, Brick Bradley, among many others, just to name a few. As for the villains, you have Shredder, aka Oroku Saki, Krang with his android body, Rocksteady and Bebop, Baxter Stockman and his Mousers, the Foot Soldiers or Alpha 1, Trag, Granitor, Toka, Razar, Scumbag, Anthrax, Ground Chuck and Dirtbag, Chrome Dome, Rat King, Leatherhead, the Pizza Monster, the Flying Turtle Necker Brothers, Slash, Tempestra, Crooked Turtle Ninja Gang, and the Triceratons. Then you have a whole bunch of other randoms that are fillers or one-off characters, and I would go over them all, but trust me, it's a lot. Throughout the series, each season basically contains its own set of storylines to wrap up certain loose ends or expands the universe by introducing characters. For example, the big emphasis here is the Technodrome, which plays a pivotal role throughout 7 seasons out of the 10. We soon get introduced to Krang, a reptilian-like transdimensional alien who was banned from Dimension X, his homeland of infrared atmosphere, and due to scheming tactics, his appearance was stripped into a demorphed brain and gets sent to Earth in exile. By somehow forming an alliance with the Shredder, he winds up allowing him to use his equipment within the Technodrome, assisting him in creating the robotic foot soldiers in exchange for Shredder to build Krang a new body. When the Turtles discover the hidden location underground during a rescue mission to save Splinter by yelling the famous catchphrase, "Cowabunga," unless you're Leonardo who then screams out, "Turtles fight with honor," not only do we get a full battle scene against the Foot Clan, but motives have driven Krang and Shredder to open the portal to Dimension X, where Krang can summon his army of rock soldiers to invade. The Turtles continue to kick ass and also face Krang within his new android body, as well as Splinter finally confronting Shredder, putting an end to their feud once and for all. Sadly, Splinter makes the ultimate sacrifice by not taking the opportunity to revert back to a human by destroying a retro-mutagen gun in order to save the Turtles during a setback. Nonetheless, the Turtles end up reversing the polarity, which causes the whole Technodrome to be sucked back into Dimension X, thus allowing the Turtles to celebrate their first real victory by saving the world. I'm pretty impressed with how these first 5 episodes panned out, because it shares insights on the origins of the ooze and how the Turtles are adapting to the upper life. And let's not forget their means for transportation, as they have the Turtle Van, Turtle Blimp, Cheapskate, Turtle Tubes, or Floaties, and more. But as the seasons continue, and in regards to the villains and the Technodrome storyline, because of their failures and endless effort to get revenge, the Technodrome faces a back and forth dilemma of returning to Earth, in which they seek energy due to its lack of power. And here we see the Turtles go against the world's biggest threat when Krang and Shredder try to merge Earth with Dimension X, and this was definitely one of the better few suspenses within the series. Despite having an unsuccessful outcome, the Technodrome wanders through different locations thanks to the Turtles, whether it's remaining within the Earth's core, underwater, or even the Arctic, until finally settling its fate when being lost in a dimensional limbo as the series concludes. As that storyline continues in the forefront, the Turtles on the other hand throughout the remainder of the series, especially during their days off, are seen aiding an alien who gives them a task to search for a crystal or different fragments like the Eye of Sonoth that's scattered throughout the city. Whether they're getting help from any one of the listed allies, there's one thing that can't go unnoticed is their love for pizza. The amount of times I've heard Michelangelo crave pizza was enough to drive me crazy, that at some point Donatello had to make him his own pizza maker to shut him up. The disguises really makes you contemplate on how nobody can recognize these phony appearances when in a good few episodes the world practically knows they exist, when they're constantly being exploited by April on TV, attending parades, or actually revealing themselves to the world and surprisingly being accepted by most as heroes, despite some still being against them. But the amount of different outfits is unmatched and probably one of my favorite parts because you just never know what they're going to wear next. The rest of the time the Turtles are seen watching TV bored out of their mind, or simply hitting the turtle fatigue and often asked to take breaks from all the constant training. So when Splinter gets pissed off seeing how they think there's nothing left to learn, he ends up abandoning them to see what life without him is like, until realizing there's still a purpose to become better students and a lot more to master using the ethics of Splinter's teachings, because when they see the outcome of this, the Turtles end up disbanding and take odd jobs to have a normal life. In fact, to prove just how ungrateful they really are sometimes, there's even one episode where the Turtles travel to the year 2036, and the future versions of themselves are pretty much washed out, being old nobodies, and that puts things into perspective, especially seeing the fate of those around them of a different timeline. Situations that become too stressful eventually lead Leonardo to feel discouraged as the leader, and even decides to leave the group to find himself. Donatello is the sole reason why a lot of things get accomplished due to his intelligence and innovations, so he's practically the star of the entire series. If it weren't for him, they'd all be dead. Michelangelo sometimes struggles to be normal as he tries to do traditional things like seeing what it's like to be a human, celebrating birthdays, working as a pizza delivery guy, and random encounters. Raphael enjoys being a comedic relief so much that he tries to have his own sitcom or stage show as a comedian. Now, to briefly touch up on some side stories or characters, April has been a news reporter for about a year at this point, but due to her inconsistencies of finding news or lack of, she often hits thin ice of being fired multiple times because half of the time she's busy getting her ass kicked rather than filming. Her ratings as a reporter eventually hits an all-time low until she focuses on the Turtles, but Thomas Burns hates them with a passion. And speaking of Burns, regardless how many times the Turtles save him, he never truly shares his gratitude and constantly blames them for the chaos within the city, as a cliche scenario. Vernon is your typical coward and makes it his mission to get April demoted or fired, and Irma is practically a horny girl always searching for the best man to satisfy her needs, a sad yet twisted hopeless romantic. Zack is surprisingly a well worth inclusion to the list because he actually becomes a strong ally to the Turtles, helping them out on numerous occasions. Although his parents call him insane and toss his ass into a psychiatric asylum for children, he still means well. Casey Jones, on the other hand, is an interesting case. All my life I thought he was a pivotal character in the series, since he's practically everywhere today, but within the show he only appears a few times and gets his ass roasted by all the Turtles for how weird he is, and it's actually pretty funny. Even though he encountered them multiple times and helps them out on missions, whenever he cross paths with them next, he acts like he doesn't know them, calls them lawbreakers, and tries to kick their ass. Dude is just absolutely nuts. And if you think that's bad, there's one episode where Casey applies for a job in his mask while wearing a suit, and he actually gets the job. And no, I'm not making this up. Aside from this, the show offers some interesting origin stories alongside Splinter and Shredder's storyline, like the creation of Rocksteady and Bebop, and one of my favorites involving Mondo Gecko, as he was actually in the sewer with the Turtles during the ooze spill, so I guess we can say he's the fifth brother, and in fact even resides next door to the Turtles within the sewers. When it comes to romanticism, the Turtles are obviously horny over April on numerous occasions, until that is, Raph has a thing for Mona Lisa, Mikey has multiple crushes, mainly being Kala from the Neutrinos, but switches between her, April, and Buffy, but the more important one being Leo and Lotus. Their chemistry is often matched as being equally met with their same skill set, and tries to persuade her of the right path. Although she has her own agendas, she often leaves Leo high and dry, but lets him know her feelings towards him. And as an interesting cameo, one of the storylines I did enjoy is seeing Usagi Yojimbo being included within the series, as he gets abducted through Donatello's portal generator into Earth. And even though he's a noble one, I love whenever he gets into a sword fight, whether that's fighting Leo or Shredder. Total badass. Now let's talk about the villains. Shredder is once again another cliche villain whom never accomplishes his task and continues to fail time after time, blaming everyone around him, especially Rocksteady and Bebop, by calling them fools or idiots in every episode. Because Shredder needed to redeem himself after failing his end of the bargain, Krang eventually cuts costs on his equipment, making him work twice as hard because Krang won't supply him anymore due to the lack of trust. This eventually causes a lot of tension and bickering between the two, as they always throw shade under the breath insults and exclaim that they don't need each other, but when things go wrong, they're practically glued begging for mercy. We also get to see a glimpse into the life of Shredder as we get storylines involving his mother and brother, but the more important dynamic here is Shredder and Baxter. When needing someone to help him capture Splinter and the Turtles, Baxter is the only one who's smart enough to do so, as his inventions on the Mousers are top notch. So in his origins, getting turned down from employments left him to go crazy and work against the system. Baxter winds up having a sad and emotional story arc within the series, which I consider a highlight because not only does Shredder screw him over and over again, especially when altering his appearance into a fly by accident, but Baxter ends up being lost in the dimensional limbo and gets himself into bizarre situations, all while trying to get revenge on Shredder and the Turtles. I can't help but to feel bad for the guy because he just wants to be normal and go home, but situations leave him to make strange allies, and though you wish for him to have the upper hand, he sadly never does. Season 7 is by far the worst of the entire series. The Turtles win a trip to travel around the world, and they do exactly just that by heading to numerous locations regarding anywhere in Europe. Splinter becomes their actual teacher and shreds knowledge of paintings, the history of the city, and so on. Somehow, April gets assigned a cover story and miraculously stumbles upon the Turtles there, and not only that, all the ancient artifacts or wealthy possessions that Shredder and Krang want happens to be at the exact location. What a coincidence. But there is one episode, however, that I really liked, is when Shredder summons a few rogues to team up to finally put an end to the Turtles, in which they surprisingly do. But thanks to the fifth turtle, Zack, he summons his own group involving April, Irma, Splinter, and Casey to rescue the Turtles, to teach an important lesson that you don't need to have powers to be a hero. There's a lot of fillers in this series, so I won't list them all, but some of the worst ones that stood out to me was the entire episode dedicated to the Turtles searching for unique wrist cuffs, Leonardo being mistaken as an alien on a farm, the Turtles daydreaming by fighting Freddy Krueger, or maybe sometimes when they turn to babies and someone has to babysit their asses. But like I said, there's so many to go over. And then we have moments where characters break the fourth wall by talking to the camera, pointing at us to explain what's happening in the episode, informing us of previous episodes, admitting there's a climax when the background music gets intense, especially when using the theme song, and just speaking the obvious. During the last 3 seasons of the series, the show takes a new and slightly darker approach after the disastrous last few seasons, and it's safe to say I understand why fans were heading into turtle fatigue. With the intro now using clips from the 1990 TMNT movie and turning the sky red, the Turtles themselves alongside April and Splinter get somewhat of a new update in design, as there's black outlines around their eyes, looking a lot meaner. Not only does the Channel 6 building gets wrecked, April changes her appearance as well and Splinter somewhat stays the same. However, aside from Byrne and Vernon returning, we get introduced to new characters like the Dark Water Commandos and a new guy named Connor who wants to join the Turtles in their mission to stop a new evil threat of various villains. But the cool part is, Connor is actually a sketchy-ass character that appears to mean well, but some episodes leaves his loyalty to be questioned as well as learning as he's not really who he appears to be. Aside from Shredder, Krang, Rocksteady, and Bebop, and Rat King, who's the only returning characters from the past, we get introduced to a lot of new villains who really don't offer much, so I guess it's not really important to talk about. Other than that, the Turtles face some bizarre situations like mutating into steroid versions of themselves, or even to meet their past or future counterparts, which was pretty cool. However, these last 3 seasons offer nothing much other than turtle marketing, as the villains, especially Titanus or Lord Dreg, don't succeed as usual, and with Shredder and Krang taking majority of the back seat, eventually their fates wind up being teleported back to Dimension X for good, which was a lackluster finale to these iconic characters. So how do the Turtles end up celebrating or even acknowledging that the whole series is over? Yup, you guessed it, they decide to make popcorn. Overall, this show is not what I imagined it to be. As a kid, Turtles were everywhere and the hype was real and still is today, but I always wanted to know why, and I always heard nothing but praises for the cartoon and especially the action figures or comics. And now that I've seen all 193 episodes, I must admit, I kinda failed to see the big deal, at least within the animated series, because aside from a few good storylines, the amount of fillers outweigh its potential. But I get it, it's for the kids compared to the darker comics or films that came after or prior. Nonetheless, I do love the voice acting, some of the scenarios made me crave pizza, the graphics had some ups and downs but good enough for an 80s show, and overall made me appreciate the Turtles a lot more. And maybe, if I ever get to the comics, it might even go deeper than that. Therefore, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the animated series, gets a B. Thanks for watching, be sure to give a like and subscribe for more animated series reviews and stay tuned for the next episode.